Hello friends and greetings for the day. Welcome back to another tutorial on ISTQB Foundation level sample paper discussions where we are talking about tips, tricks and time management related to this examination. As a part of this particular tutorial, we are stepping into the chapter 2 of set D and we shall be looking forward to the questions related to the concepts of software development lifecycle and test levels and several other things. So let's quickly get started. The very first question we have is question number 9 and it says, which of the following is a good testing practice that applies to all software development life cycles? I think we have discussed this several times in our past papers as well, so there's nothing to talk about. To the point, software for every development activity there must be a software testing activity. Then every test level must have an objective specific to that level. At the same time, the test analysis and test design should get started early in the life cycle. And finally, testers should be involved as soon as drafts are available. Keeping this in mind, we can look at the options. Option A says each test level has a specific and distinct test objective. In fact, gives me something which is very relevant. But what about the other options? Option B says test implementation and execution for a given test level should start during the corresponding development phase, but the phases are incorrect. It should be test analysis and design, whereas it is saying test implementation and execution, which is incorrect. C says testers should start test design as soon as the drafts of the relevant work product become available. It is not test design, it's test analysis. That means reviewing the work product should begin as soon as the first draft is made available. And the option D here says every dynamic testing activity has a corresponding static testing activity. No, it's again turned around. Every development test activity should have a corresponding testing activity. So in simple words, the same statements, but we'll be having some kind of twisting around by twisting the keywords to make sure that if in case you have some confusion in the preparation, you would land up getting confused and wasting a lot of your time. But if you have been through these content very wisely, then certainly you will have the to the point right answer. And same way here, the right answer to this particular question is A. Each test level has specific and distinct test objective specific to that level, and that's what is one of the right statement regarding the characteristics of testing. Let's move on quickly to the next question. The next question we have is question number 10 for you. The number 10 says, which of the following is an example of test first approach to development? This is also very straightforward. We have covered it as a part of our discussion, and we only have three of them which are covered in our syllabus and generally also available. That is TDD, BDD and ATDD. TDD stands for test driven development, BDD stands for behavior driven development, and ATDD stands for acceptance test driven development. Let's quickly check the options. Option A says behavior driven development, B says test level driven development, C says function driven development, and D says performance driven development. So we don't really have to consume a lot of our time and picking up the right answer for this particular question as A, that is behavior driven development, is one of the test first approach, whereas the test level was just a kind of trap to confuse you a little bit. But if you are sure that it is test driven development, you don't have to worry about the same. Let's move on to the next question. The next question we have is question number 11 and it says which of the following is most likely to be a challenge encountered when implementing DevOps? So DevOps is something which we need to worry about, and we have been talking about it. However, I would like to make sure that we do quickly check it out that there are different challenges and different risks involved, and certainly it's not a straightforward thing. So the more you have spent your time understanding every single detail about it would help you to pick up the right answer. However, the question again says which of the following is most likely to be a challenge which we have in terms of implementing DevOps. So the option A says make sure that non-functional quality characteristics are not overlooked. When it comes to DevOps, of course, non-functional characteristics are basically eliminated. That means as if we start implementing the DevOps, then automatically the non-functional characteristics come out of it, and that is where it gets highlighted, and rather than overlooked, it is being looked into. as we start talking about this. And over a period of time after functional tests are being implemented, we can even embed the non-functional test. But it's not that the DevOps basically pull this into an overlook way. So it's not a challenge, but not a illegal statement in terms of DevOps at all. Let's go to option B. Option B says managing continuously changing test environment. The reason why DevOps came into picture was the only thing that the environment would be more stabilized, and that's the reason we are trying to do DevOps, which is continuous integration and continuous deployment. And the only reason we could achieve it is because the environments are stable. We have fixed set of environments, like say for example QA, SIT, UAT, and all, and we want to run them. So it's not that the DevOps invites you to have changing requirements, which is not certainly a challenge related to DevOps. Let's look at the option C. Option C says the need for more manual testers with suitable experience. If we are talking about DevOps, we are talking about maximum automation, or at least 100% automation. So there is no scope for manual testing as far as the organization implements the DevOps, because this is to have 100% automation of this DevOps pipeline. So manual testers are not required in that context. Rather, automation testers with a better experience would be required to implement this automated test script. So that also goes certainly wrong as a challenge for the DevOps. And now we are left with option D. Option D says setting up the test automation as a part of the delivery pipeline. Indeed, why not? Because this is what is the activity which we perform as a part of implementing DevOps pipeline. And when it comes to automation, automation tool have to be integrated with other tools, and the script has to be written. This is going to be a slightly different script than that of ordinary test script, because it has to be auto-triggerable and everything should happen on its own. That means it's not me who will be visualizing the result. It's not me who will be handling the exceptions. It's not me who will be deciding which browser to run on. Everything has to be pre-fed, and that's where it becomes one of the key challenges to deal with. So I think that makes it pretty clear to us that the right answer for this particular question is D, that is setting up the test automation as a part of the delivery pipeline, is in these options a challenge which we can see as a part of implementing the DevOps pipeline, whereas the other options are just not relevant to that of as a challenge for the DevOps implementation. Let's move on to the next question. The next question we have is number 12, and it says, which of the following best describes retrospectives? We have discussed about retrospectives in our past tutorials as well, so we'll just keep it to the point and let's move on to the options. In fact, retrospectives are the activity where we gather together to discuss what could be better, what we should stop doing, and what we should continue doing. So in other words, good practices, bad practices, and innovations. So look at the option. Option A says retrospective allow team members to identify other team members who did not fully contribute to achieving quality as required by the whole team approach. See, again, when we talk about the retrospectives, we may generally talk about the process, the documentation, the task, the activities which we are conducting, and people are generally not the factor. However, to a certain extent in the real world practice, we do say that yes, we can even talk about people who are not responding to your queries, but as a primary factor, retrospective does not deal with evaluating people and their improvements. So that is where we cannot consider pointing out somebody's criticism as an ethical practice to be considered as a part of retrospective, as an objective. But offline, we can certainly discuss that what the engagement is missing from and how exactly that person can cope up or probably get more engaged in upcoming sprints. So that's not something what I can consider as a part of primary objective for retrospective. The option B says retrospective give testers an opportunity to identify activities that were successful so that these are retained when potential improvements are made in the future. Activities is the key word which is reminding us that yes, retrospectives are more about improvising our tasks, improvising our activities, and having that being highlighted here, we can talk about this option because yes, tester can consider the good practices, the bad practices, as well as the innovations. That is new idea. So here in this option, we are clearly talking about the good practices which can be retained for any upcoming future cycles. If I look at option C says retrospectives are where agile team members are allowed to voice their concerns about management and customers in a blame-free environment. Now that's a little tricky statement, okay? Because if I talk about the benefits of retrospectives, they are basically based on increased effectiveness and efficiency through process improvement, and they are not an opportunity to let off steam and criticize the management and customers. Don't forget the first statement which I said in this discussion, that our key objective is to understand how we can improve the process, not the people. And in that people context, our management, customer, everyone comes into picture. So retrospectives does not deal with a primary objective of that who is not doing their job. It's more about how we can make our process better. Let's move on to option D. And option D here says that retrospective give agile team members a forum where they can focus on discussing the plan and technical discussions for the next iteration. Again, to say that we have different ceremonies as a part of Agile. There are sprint planning, there is retrospective, there is backlog grooming, and each of these ceremony have something specific in their objective. Sprint planning is the one which talks about defining what to do for the next iteration, or picking up the stories from the product backlog to that of the sprint backlog, estimating them and assigning them to the respective users. Whereas retrospective is at the end of the sprint. However, given that it is at the end of sprint, it does not mean that you're talking about planning for the next sprint. Retrospective is an end ceremony which basically gathers together to understand what we could not do and how we can do that better, and so on and so forth. And that is where this becomes again an irrelevant option, because it's not a part of the retrospective. So put together, the right answer for this particular question is B, that is retrospective give testers an opportunity to identify activities that were successful so that these are retained when potential improvements are made in the future. And that's how we can easily come to the conclusion, given that we really have the context clear with respect to that of each subject. Let's move on to the next question. The next question we have for you is question number 13. And it says, which of the following test is most likely to be performed as part of functional testing? Now, this is a little tricky question because we have covered functional testing in different modules like component integration, system integration, etc. And at the same time, we discuss a differentiation between functional and non-functional. So this topic, that is functional and non-functional, is being picked up as a question here and trying to ask you that how can you differentiate between the functional and the non-functional testing. So right here, and we will be trying to understand what exactly does that mean. So when it comes to the test levels, functionality is all about the core testing, the core features, the core functionalities, what we have, and we will be trying to understand that what is which of the option here is more related to core responsibility and which talks about the non-functional attributes. Let's see the option. Option A says the test checks that the sort function puts the element of the list or array in a ascending order. Now this looks like a core functionality of a particular program, that its only job is to sort the orders, sort the numbers and put them into an array, which could do the relevant activity and would be responsible to perform this activity in a way that the sorting happens and makes sense in terms of functionality. If I talk about option B, it says the test checks whether the sort function completes sorting within 1 second of starting. Now 1 second of starting, that means the function being completed in a particular given time, is talking more about the performance of the system, and it's more of like the processing time which we are looking at. And processing time, response time, all these goes into non-functional because it's a performance, and performance is not measured as a part of functionality. If I look at option C says the test checks how easily the sort function can be changed from sorting ascending to sorting descending. This feature or this particular characteristic is related to portability, or basically as a part of it we have sub attribute called as adaptability, and adaptability is basically more about the change which we conduct and the program can adapt to the rest of the written code is what gets done here. But again, keeping it simple to the point, adaptability is a part of the non-functional testing, so we don't really have to worry about that as well. And option D says to check the test checks that the sort function still function correctly when moved from a 32-bit to 64-bit architecture. Now, 64-bit architecture from 32-bit is basically again a part of portability itself and goes with adaptability. I think I need to just correct a little bit. The previous one, which is changing, sorting, ascending to descending, is basically a part of maintainability, and whereas the 32-bit to 64-bit, which is the change in the environment, which we put it into adaptability, which is related to the portability. So again, if you see, the option B, C, D are quite relevant to that of non-functionalities, whereas option A, performing the task, is falling into the functional aspects. And that's what we can conclude. The right answer for this particular question is A, that is, the test checks that the sort function puts the element of the list or array in an ascending order is the test which we can conduct as functional, whereas all other three are related to non-functionality. Let's quickly move on to the last question of this chapter as well, and that is question number 14. It says, which of the following is most likely to be a trigger that leads to maintenance testing of currency exchange system? Trigger for maintenance testing. If you remember, we have discussed already as a part of our maintenance testing module that we have three things to trigger the maintenance testing. And number one is, of course, the modifications which are related to update and upgrade. Then we have environmental and operational changes. And the third is retirement. So these are the three major events which we have as a part of the entire trigger for the maintenance testing. And that is what exactly we look forward to do when it comes to the maintenance testing triggers. So in these options, all we have to check is which of these triggers are relevant to these three triggers, right? As far as we can find that, we can exactly conclude the right answer. Let's move on to option A. It says the developers reported that changing the currency exchange system was difficult and the testers decided to check if this was true. Now that looks, even if you read it, looks a little irrelevant, because assuming that the testers could check the ease of changing the currency exchange system, then it would be done by maintainability testing rather than maintenance testing. Because see, whether a code can be updated or not is basically a maintainability check. That means whether this is hard coded or dynamic enough to modify it at any point of time is generally measured as a part of maintainability. Whereas after this maintainability, that means after the change is conducted or implemented, we look forward to conduct the maintenance testing. So maintainability and maintenance are two different things, and that's not certainly covered as a part of it. Let's move to option B. The refund option of currency exchange system was removed, and as it did not always repay the correct amount to the customer. Now that's a little tricky one because refund has been being removed, so there is some kind of change happening. But if I further see to that, a system modification such as any kind of fix or enhancement is obviously a simple trigger for any kind of maintenance testing, which is in turn regression testing. So this removal is also considered as a change because it may have left side effects behind, and that could result into certain challenges. So if that makes a little more sense. So let's move to option C. Option C says the Agile team has started developing a user story that adds a new customer loyalty feature to the currency exchange system. Now, adding a new feature looks like it would be very relevant to be considered. But if the Agile team has started developing a user story that adds a new customer loyalty feature to the currency exchange system, then this will result in testing the new feature, and then they would perform the regression testing. But no maintenance testing is required because maintenance testing is only conducted when there is a change involved, like modification, operational environment, or anything related to retirement. So these are the only trigger. This is a new feature. We will first create and test the new feature, and then we'll embed it. Then we'll do the maintenance test. Let's move on to option D. Option D says the language support option of the currency exchange system was used to enable both English and local language currency transactions. Exactly, but this looks more like a configuration change, And for configuration change, we do not have it as a trigger for maintenance testing. It's just more of like having a configuration change to adapt the local language along with the English. So it does not really fall into a category where we can say it is a modification to the code, or it is a operational environmental changes, or it is a retirement. So remember one thing, as far as you know that these are the three triggers, anything else may not be considered. But the reason I spent a little time justifying things is because you should also understand why the other things are not considered as a trigger. However, the options looks pretty much relevant that we can easily pick it up as the right answer. So things may be sometimes very complicated. All you need to have is patience and observation, attention to detail, so that you can conclude easily to the point, right? So for that thing put together, the right answer for this particular question is B, that is the refund option of the currency exchange system was removed as it did not always repay the correct amount to customer. May look a little funny because it's just not paying the amount correct, so you will remove a feature. No, you don't remember. Always remember that you don't have to judge the scenario. You have to understand whether will it trigger a round of maintenance testing or not. Well, that's all from this particular tutorial, team. Should you have anything else, feel free to comment below. I'm always there to address your queries and answer them well. Till then, keep learning, keep exploring, keep understanding the context. Thanks for watching the video, team, and happy learning.